Hello, PJ Jackson. Welcome to Torque Transferred, where we break down uncommon perspectives to outrageous challenges. I am so grateful to have you as episode 2 guest star, and I can't wait to dive in today. So, with that, PJ, tell us who PJ Jackson is in one headline.
A scientist who became a soul whisperer.
Yes, 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 yes. I love it. I love it. A scientist who became a soul whisperer. So I remember, PJ, you and I met because I was lucky enough to have you as my TEDx coach, which was such an enjoyable process. And I remember the things that stuck out to me during our first conversation was I was sitting in front of this powerful woman who had 14 years of experience in the submarine tender, right? And then also going into government policy and just this badass engineer, right? My words, I'm like, oh my gosh. And then the dichotomy of somebody with that background of like, yeah, I was an engineer for many, many years. And, I had this experience with the Navy, to somebody who is very in touch with themselves, with how to develop next generation leaders, with how to unlock leadership qualities and people who maybe have been in that role for many years, was just absolutely fascinating to me. So let's break down your headline a little bit. How did you kind of make that switch? Talk to me about that journey of somebody with very hard technical skills to somebody who maybe the world brands as soft skills, but I think is a very elite and necessary attribute that our world needs more of.
Oh, well, Joy, it really starts with sort of that social conditioning. When I was a young girl growing up in Ohio, the biggest thing my dad wanted was for me to be Miss America or Susie Homemaker. Mm-hmm. I mean, that was the goal, right? And so there was never this this thinking that I could be more than what a girl could be from the 60s.
Yeah.
And I found that I started wanting to be my father's favorite son. So I have a brother who's a lawyer. And so I thought, well, if I want dad to respect me, I have to take this male archetype and become successful. Mm-hmm. And that's what I did. I mean, I got my engineering degree and I joined the Navy, and I spent 14 years. And 10 of those 14 years, I was a single parent.
Wow.
So I was stationed in Turkey during Desert Storm. I was on an isolated tour where I took care of the spooks in Turkey. And then when the wall came down, I came back to a submarine tender, and I loved the Navy. But it was like, the Navy's my life. My daughter needs to adjust because she was having trouble with me being gone. My daughter's my life. I have to get out.
Yeah.
So I foolishly thought that I could go to Washington and deal with laws that affected the military. Well, you have to be appointed to do that. And then I ended up in aerospace and defense and started working in engineering and ended up being an applied scientist in a field of knowledge management. So my doctorate work is around pattern recognition across the generations. And I really, just because I do something different now doesn't mean I didn't thoroughly enjoy that journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I showed up one day, and in fact, I was diagnosed with a stroke in 2012.
Wow.
And at that point in my life, I was traveling across the country doing 60 speeches a year. And I just crashed. Mm. And when I crashed, it was like, what do you mean I have a stroke? What do you mean I can't use my mind? What do you mean I can't be who I have always been?
Right.
You got to be kidding me. And in fact, that was when the transition really started. When I started saying, well, what do I want to go back to?
Yeah.
What do I want to be? And that's when I really started searching and finding myself. And so it is a long journey. And I still have people come to me and say, can you do what you used to do? I'm trained as a $50 million aerospace program manager. I ran the Program Management Institute for Lockheed Martin.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I don't teach that anymore.
Right. Do you think that you would have gone from scientist to soul whisperer without that pivotal moment, which was your stroke? Do you think that would have naturally happened, or I mean, it's hard to say, right? But do you think that you would have ended up on the other side?
When we are given time to pause,
Yeah.
when we are told you can't be what you've always been, you have to sit still. What we're supposed to do rises up.
Yeah, that's very true. That resonates with me because I was on a flight to London recently, and 7 hours on a plane to actually hear your own thoughts and process data and emotion at the same time versus just data or just emotion, right? I like a healthy balance both personally. I had to confront some pretty brutal facts within what we're trying to build at Boone. There's things that are working amazingly, and there's things that I'm like, damn, that does not work, right? Like, we have to figure this out. And it wasn't until I had that 7 hours of like, it's just you and your own thoughts, where it just revealed itself. It was like, ding, 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 and now I'm really, really excited about this next leap. So that resonates a lot with me. For you, it's that moment of, unfortunately having the stroke, but on the other side, it's very fortunate because it propelled you into, who you are today, which I just, I think that is fascinating. So you're an author, you're an influencer, and you're a difference maker, which I love that headline because it's not self-serving, because it's actually exactly who you are. You're an applied scientist, you have your doctorate, and you are redefining the narrative of our future, which I've personally experienced through your TEDx coaching. And you said something interesting. You said that you see kindness as a key ingredient to success, right? And in the national security industry in particular, it can be pretty ruthless in developing weapon systems, and being a $50 million program manager. It can be a pretty ruthless career path, but that's because you're dealing with life and death in a lot of instances, right? And so you do have to make hard choices. So I love that your story is such a great reflection of this shift, right? It's really, really interesting. I'm going to pivot here and talk a little bit more about generational changes and impact. And I think, PJ, we've had a very unique relationship where we both have been able to learn from each other. And that's just so fascinating, because a lot of times I do think that generations write each other off. And candidly, I think it's bullshit, because we can learn a lot from each other, right? And your story, as I said, it's such a great reflection of the shift that we're seeing in the workforce today, right? Hiring practices are still linear, but career paths and education are not. You had this jolt that kind of forced you on this pivot. Tell us a little bit more about not taking the traditional path, from serving in the Navy and then becoming a scientist to where you are now. What was that journey like? Like, was it painful for you? Was it exciting? Is there a moment in time where it just totally clicked and you're like, oh, I need to go here? Tell us a little bit more about that.
To explain it, it's easier to use energy, right? So when we think about quantum physics, everything is energy, right? Whether it's a particle or a wave. And there is this positive and negative energy, but there's also a masculine and feminine energy. And I don't mean male or female. I just mean that those two energies, Mars, Venus, right? A complex balance of how we use those. So my entire life, up until I was in my 50s, was very dominated by the male archetype of energy. Strive, build, conquer, build more, get more, strive for more, right?
Oh, it seems oddly familiar to me.
Right. And so you're comfortable with that, because that's the social conditioning. But what I found was, especially when my stroke happened, that the things that brought me joy are creative and co-collaborating and very much the feminine energy. So when I retired from aerospace in 2016, I set my studio up and I started drawing different new things, kindness paths, being a kindness consultant at school, doing all these different things. It's a hard crossover.
Yeah.
And so I come out of industry being sought after, calendar full, and I'm looking around going, how come there's no meetings on my calendar?
Yeah. What's happening here?
But don't people want to talk to me now? Am I that different?
Yeah.
And it took me 3 years to journey through. And I mean, that's what my third book is, The Labyrinth Influence, is how you go from, I wouldn't even admit that I would go to a women's conference because why would I want to be a woman? I just want to be successful.
Ooh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All the way to I am meditating every day and co-creating and building relationships with people that will create things that I have no clue where they're going to go. It just feels good, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you have to bridge that. And it is hard because our social conditioning of what others expect of us drive us.
Absolutely.
And it's not a bad thing that drives us. But if it's not our path, if it's not what gives you joy, then you are just sleepwalking in somebody else's story.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting because I feel like the world isn't built to let you slow down, right? Especially especially in the US and especially in the national security community. Like it's like now, right? Because if somebody doesn't do it, who is going to? If no one's coming, it's up to us, right? And that's amazing, but there's also this unintended consequence, right? And I like to think about unintended consequences a lot. Let's bridge to what is the problem that you are most proud of solving?
Finding myself.
Okay. All right. Finding yourself. So is that your journey in self-discovery, everybody's trying to find themselves every day, right? But you have a very critical moment where maybe you are at level 5 of Maslow's hierarchy, maybe not full enlightenment, but you're pretty close. You're very in tune. And so, I wouldn't define you as a problem, but finding yourself and being in aligned was definitely, it sounds like a big issue for you. So, talk to me about leaving the safety net of a full-time government job, right? Very, very linear, specific career path. Here's what I have to achieve for this next level of fulfillment, whether it's real or contrived. And talk us through that problem set.
Well, I grew up in industry, never placing myself first. And I don't mean that from an ego base. I just mean that I wasn't important. My work was important. My customers were important. Mm-hmm. My boss was important. My performance appraisal was important. I wasn't important. And so I always fell to the bottom of the list. And so once you start realizing that you have these unique skills, you really start to expand your consciousness. So you start living consciously aware. Mm-hmm. And for me, I was lucky enough to take this Emergenetics tool test. It's a profile that actually teaches you how you think and how you behave.
Yeah.
So when you think about a circle and there's blue, green, red, and yellow. Well, blue's analytical and green structural. I was 8% blue and 8% green, but yet I was running aerospace programs.
And yet you're in a career path that's like 100% both of those things. So now your misalignment makes sense, right?
It made sense. And so it gave me permission to be who I am. And that is really difficult. So you start to say to yourself, I don't want to stay in this pathway
Yeah.
And the little things that start creeping in are, who am I? And it's not my resume.
Right.
It's who am I?
Yeah.
And who am I going to live with for the rest of my life? It's not going to be an aerospace program manager.
Yeah.
It's going to be someone who gives themselves self-care, that gives themselves self-love, that takes a break.
Yeah, because then you can produce more at your highest value when you do that.
Right.
The other thing too, that I think your story highlights is that the American dream has been changed, redefined rather, each generation, right? It changes a little bit, and the American dream is, I think it's a little bit of a loose term now, right? Because it changes so much. And with the marks of that evolution of every generation, the marks of success and happiness change as well. And within that, values and norms shift. So before, we didn't used to talk about mental health at all, and now it's a very prominent, in that storyline, it's a very prominent topic in social media and in actual media, which I think is really important. So this idea of success and happiness shifting generation over generation. You mentor and coach a lot of people in a lot of different ages and backgrounds. You see the values and norms shifting, right? So this leads me into the challenge that I am having a fun time in my own thoughts looking at today with the national security community. So let me frame this for you, and then we're gonna deliberate back and forth a little bit to talk about what a potential solution could be. So with what you're doing as a career development and empowerment coach, right? I'm sure that you've been coaching a lot of folks through what we're calling the Great Resignation, right? What do I do? The pandemic changed a lot of people. It changes values and norms. We've been seeing this as well through years of national security side with the workforce crisis, the big bathtub, right? Can't get people in. Everybody's retiring out. What's happening in the middle? How do we upskill? You're aware that we are, quote unquote, losing top talent at high rates, whether that's going out of government, whether that's going overseas, or even going to other industries. And it's potentially harming our competitive advantage as a country, right? I think human capital, I talked about this with you, is number one, people first, right? We think about systems all the time in national security and we just forget about the people, but you helped me write this line. When everything else fails, who do we send to the front line? People, right? So if you were head of talent management for all of national security, all right, there's a lot of talent managers out there and I have a lot of respect for every single one of them. We work closely with them. But if you were head of talent management for a day and you could tap a wand and things could get put in play, right? What would you do to retain and attract talent in this community, given what you know?
Well, Joy, the Great Resignation isn't new at all. It's been around over 10 years. I mean, back in aerospace, when we would bring in junior interns and we'd say, hey, we're going to give you 30 years on Joint Strike Fighter. Isn't that amazing? All the stability. And they would look at us like we were crazy. Yeah. Because it's like, why would I want a job for 30 years? I want flexibility. And you have to shift that mindset. We would get grads from MIT and we'd say, hey, come on over here and work with us, bring your engineering expertise. And they'd say, hold on a minute. I'm planning to spend 2 years hiking the Himalayas and finding myself. And if you offer me the best package, I'll come to you. And so this isn't new. Yeah. It's not new at all. In fact, if you look at Harvard Business Review, they'll say from 2009, people dropping out of the workforce has increased by a percentage over that whole time. And 2020 actually dropped, but it's because we can point to something, the pandemic. And I really think what's happening in the generations is that we're shifting from what we expect as a social norm of loyalty.
Ooh.
we believe that people show up loyal, no matter what we do, how we treat them, how we pay them, the working conditions, because that was the condition of your grandma, right? Going to the assembly line, being grateful for the job, being grateful to have stability. That is not the case anymore. They don't want to be loyal because of the job. They want to be loyal because of how you treat them.
Yeah.
That's the difference. And so if I was in charge of recruiting, it would be, how well do you know yourself? Why are you looking to be part of this? What do you want to accomplish?
Right.
Where is your heart? And so when you start looking at team dynamics, I think what has happened in the past is we've taken people and said, I need 10 people on this team. Who are the best 10 people? Okay, they look good on paper. Team. Now, team, go create. And the team looks at each other and goes, who the hell are you? And why are you on the team? And why am I on the team? And how come you're doing what I want to do? I want to do what you're doing. Do you want to do what I'm doing? But we don't do any of that because it's all like, don't talk about your salary, don't talk about your job, don't talk to each other about that.
No transparency, no collaboration, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think employers can do to better understand and connect with the aptitude of their employees and applicants? And when I say aptitude, I specifically mean the ability to learn a particular skill, because what you just described is like, it's so close to something I'm passionate about. I'll try not to get on a soapbox, but that's exactly right? Like I got tagged early on as a logistician. Why? Joy's organized. So obviously she's going to be a good logistician because there's all these different dynamics and variables and complex systems, blah. But then if you actually look at my highest ability, it is absolutely not logistics and in operations integration, right? I have somebody on our team who balances me out because he's amazing at that. But on paper, somebody would have just, self-assessed and okay, here you go. And so, I'm very hungry to get after how do you actually test for aptitude? Like just because I'm organized doesn't mean I should be on a logistics project. How do I actually baseline? Maybe I would be a fantastic coder. I would never know that. And I can't make that jump myself, but there's a way to uncover that. So what do you think employers can do, whether it's government employment, contractor, or not even in the national security community, to better understand and connect with the aptitude of their employees and applicants for that team building?
I believe it's based in how you think.
Yeah.
So I'll use me as an example. You could not put me in a room with Excel spreadsheets and make me enjoy that ever. Okay. But there are people.
Because we're the same.
Right.
I'm like, hello, nice to see you.
Right. But yet, when you are a program manager, you're supposed to understand financials. You're supposed to understand the numbers. Okay. There's one thing to understanding them. There's another to loving them.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's finding out what people love. Okay. Now, I was well known for taking a red program green in 90 days. Okay. But what does that take? It takes creativity and working with people.
Yeah.
That's where you find the aptitude is how do people think? Do they think in numbers? Do they think in structure? Do they always bring the people together? Or are they always out on that edge?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
And when you start to think about that, you then start to see how they behave. And I think that's critical. Never in my life did I question that I was supposed to learn how to negotiate. But I was never aggressive enough. Come to find out, I'm a peacekeeper. I'm a diplomat. So I don't negotiate aggressively. I use my aptitude to converse at a level of love and understanding and kindness, not as that other end of the spectrum. And I think aptitude comes from what you love to do. Now, the ability to keep a job, everybody's got that. You tell me you want this deliverable, I'll get this deliverable to you by Friday because I need the job. But there's a point where that safety net of security
doesn't matter,
starts to strangle you.
Yeah. Do you think, what do you think about lighting the position description on fire? Where I'm going with this is you said something very, very interesting, which is, I'm going to summarize in my own words, but taking the time to understand things like psychometrics and aptitude, how somebody thinks and behaves. The and behave piece is what triggered this question, right? In order to affect and nurture positive behavior in a learning organization, however that behavior of positivity is defined by said organization, do you think that lighting the position description on fire and instead talking about behaviors and overarching outcomes could help unlock that creativity, especially in a technical team?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I will tell you that whenever I'm hiring anyone, I have them do the emergenetics tool, because I may love a story you tell me in an interview. I may think that the program project that you're sharing with me is amazing, but maybe you didn't even create it all.
Yeah.
But when I see how you think and how you behave, and I need you to run my numbers for me, and your blue is 8%, there's no way in hell I would want to put you on my team.
In there. Right.
So we did an assessment of an organization, a bunch of senior leaders that were having trouble with their customer relationships.
Okay.
And they said they were doing everything that the surveys said that their customers wanted. We just don't understand what's wrong. They all took the emergenetics profile. None, 0 of the leaders had any red, which is social.
That's awesome. Hello?
And so in a simple test, it was like, we can tell you what your problem is. None of your leaders think about people. And so I really believe that there's a lot of tests out there. A lot of tests tell you you're this, but not that.
Yeah.
You're good at this, but not that. What the emergenetics tool tells you is, here is your brilliance. Here are your strengths, because you think like this and you behave like this.
Yeah.
Then it gives you permission to be the real you.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. I love that so much. So I'm going to put a bow on top of this, and I would like you to give the national security community a challenge, right? In terms of, you're not going to go lead all of talent management for all of national security. Neither am I. Neither is any one person, right? It's all of us that contribute to the space. So if you had to challenge the community to think differently or take one action, one new action daily to help, make this shift that you did personally, right, in total alignment, because I do think that creates better solutions to really tough problems. What would that challenge or call to action be?
Well, I think first you have to realize that the world has shifted. The energies of the past to strive and overcome are being taken over by this co-creating and this nurturing energy. And if you are not expressing a nurturing energy with your employees, you're not going to be the company or the organization that they work with. You have to figure out how to treat the people that you want to come to your organization or who are already in your organization as authentic, valuable people, not the title that they're filling or the demographic that they're filling, but they add value. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, gee, I hope they don't figure out that I'm terrible. Everybody wakes up and says, boy, I really want to take care of what I need to do so that my boss thinks I'm amazing.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to be amazing. So my challenge would be, how do you understand what their amazing is?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that. And I think it comes down to thinking about it not in a transactional, here's your benefits, here's your title, here's this, here's that. You know, you can show people that you care, you can tell them that you care. And if those two things are not aligned, that's where you have a break, right? So it sounds like the big takeaway for me, and that I hope our listeners take away, is whether you're inside a government program office, you're inside a commercial company providing services or technology, national security, or you're in a completely different industry. If you are a leader in an organization at any level, which is all of us, but in particular in the C-suite, right, or equivalent, how do you create a space where your team members are experiencing your organization as a living, breathing entity, right? Not as a checklist of benefits, as a, if this, then that. And that is an evolution in how we hire, how we nurture, how we create, how we align. And we do that in meaningful, full ways. Ultimately, it sounds like that if you are courageous enough to face the music, which you did, right, to make the jump and then help other people do that, the ultimate result is creating more value in our world, right? And I love and appreciate that about you. And you've certainly done that for me and my life, and also Boone and our organization. So PJ, it has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us in episode 2 of Torque Transferred, where we break down uncommon perspectives to outrageous challenges. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Joy.
Yeah.